This is Sybert signing into Generals 0 Hour on the map Tournament Desert, and as the pink Demolition GLA in the north, it's DoMiNaToR. And in the south, selling off his Chinese command center before I could see what faction he actually was, it's RaGe. That's right, RaGe versus DoMiNaToR. This replay is game number 1 from the Premier League 1v1 event that was run over at GameReplays.org, the Generals 0 Hour section. So if you want to check that out, you can indeed go and check out some of the other replays. Now, these are 6 games that's going to be happening between these players, but I am not going to be casting 6 games. Basically, as kind of a safety measure, I conferred with Ownage Machine of the Generals Gentlemen, and basically as a safety measure, I was like, hey, what's a good size for a 0 Hour game replay file to be? And he was like, 150 kilobytes. And so basically everything that's around 150 or above, I'm going to be casting, because the majority of the replays from the 1v1 Premier League are like in the 40 to 50 kilobyte range. Like, they're extremely small, and already with a pretty bad start off, losing that first dozer. However, he does, I mean, the important thing is that RaGe was able to get out, well, he was able to get out the supply, and then he almost got out the War Factory, but he does get the cancel on that, which is good. But he got out the supply, and then he also got out the War Factory on the left side. So it's not actually a huge setback there for RaGe. He is going to be rebuilding that War Factory over here on the left side. As you can see, he does still have that one dozer. And if you are new to Generals, which, for those of you who aren't new to this channel, you'll remember that I don't cast Generals in 0 Hour very often because I'm terrible at it. I just don't know very much about it. And then, for a while, there was lots of good Generals in 0 Hour casters. And there's still, of course, the Generals Gentlemen who are active. So if you need your Generals in 0 Hour fix, you can head over to them, and they regularly cast that, as well as League of Legends if you are interested in that. So at any rate, by the way, Ownage Machine recently did post his why I love, or why I think 0 Hour is awesome, which is a fantastic video, kind of an opinion piece about why 0 Hour is just an awesome game in general. So you should also go check that out in the description. At any rate, these two players, not a terrible amount of diversity in this play. I mean, neither player, from what I can tell, has been going for anything too crazy. Normally, you do see barracks first, a couple of terrorists to try to snipe down those dozers or any sort of early aggression like we've seen. The tunnels on the right side, I'm actually kind of surprised we haven't seen a few more tunnels on the left side here. Although we do have RaGe. He's taking a little bit of pressure here, and of course, terror technicals are a very, very common sort of attack. Unfortunately, that technical was being covered up a little bit there by the UI at the bottom. So you do have to, of course, watch out for those terror technicals when playing GLA against, well, when you're playing China against GLA. But as you can see, we've got the start of the sort of tunnel creep for DoMiNaToR. He's really just wanting a good place to go ahead and exit out a lot of units. And of course, this is one thing that whenever you're playing against GLA, you do have to stay on top of stopping, is just making sure that you cut down on those tunnels. And actually, is there a tunnel going to be established? It probably would be. Nope, it looks like that. The Battlemaster is actually going to be going down. Will be dropping to both of those tank hunters, or rather RPG troopers, since they are GLA. However, one thing I don't really like about RaGe's play in this particular game is he's splitting off a lot of individual tanks and allowing himself to get picked apart in that way. However, at the same time, not a whole lot of eco going on this right side. I did actually miss that happened. At any rate, he's now up to that tier 3. He's got those Overlord tanks out, and that's going to be definitely giving him a point of interest for him to kind of focus his forces around. The ECM also going to be helping to deflect a lot of rockets, and of course, against RPG troopers, that is going to be very important. And this is just a slight bug. Basically, from what I can tell, it doesn't actually affect anything other than if you look over here, I can actually mouse over that and get some info. These ones, it's nothing like that. It's basically like deactivated, but as you can see, they're still harvesting from it. So don't read too much into that. It's just a slight graphical or just a slight bug. And, oh, this was a pretty big explosion. Of course, the Battlemasters from China Nuke do explode upon detonation, and there is an upgrade that you can get later on to counteract that, but it looks like 4 quads do pop out, 5 if you can actually count properly. But as you can see, they're similar to Tengus. If you're familiar with the Red Alert 3, they can be used in other Empire units. They can be used with the Honorable Discharge upgrade to go ahead, and basically it allows you to do bonus damage to the enemy units when you die. And that's kind of what Nuke Battlemasters do by default, and then you can actually get an upgrade later on in the game to go ahead and counteract that, if I am remembering everything correctly. The barracks does get thrown down by RaGe as well in the south there. Eventually going to be looking to get out some hackers, because as you can see on Tournament Desert, you've got your 2 main supply piles, which is of course mirrored in the north. And then in the middle, you've got some individual supply piles, which aren't going to last you a super long time. These are, of course, much, much smaller than your main supply piles. But after that is gone, then it's all up to the secondary economy of 0 Hour. Now we're starting to see kind of the map splits, which many people dislike Tournament Desert for, is you can very easily just throw down base defenses. I mean, that's a pretty small choke point over there. It's, of course, mirrored over here. Another pretty small choke point. Another Battlemaster does go down. And more, this Overlord is just finally starting to push its way up, which I'm assuming that's a second Overlord, not the same exact Overlord. And at the same time, there is an additional Overlord, although they do have the Propaganda Tower upgrade, which will be allowing them to sort of heal themselves and units around them. Oil derricks both ended up getting captured, but this one, well, about to be captured, rather, by Lotus on the ground there, which is really probably what that barracks was for. But eventually, we may see hackers. Hackers can be sniped down fairly easily by many players, so it's not necessarily a surefire way. It's much easier to scare yourself with, say, black markets than hackers. And there's going to be the quad puff to try to focus down the Overlord tank, but unfortunately, it's not going to be quite enough DPS without the joining of those. Well, that was really weird that there was no sound effect that played. I don't know, maybe I just didn't hear it. But hopefully it did actually play, and I just didn't hear it. But those demo bikes definitely helping the quads deal with those Battlemaster tanks. And by Battlemaster, I do indeed mean Overlord tanks. And some additional RPG troopers, but they're not quite in good enough numbers. However, what is in good enough numbers is definitely going to be the Jarman Kell, able to snipe down one of the Overlord tanks. Unfortunately, there's no infantry from either player to really just grab that just yet. The listening outpost will have to evacuate a couple of those tank hunters, and both of them do go down. Jarman Kell completely unmatched, and now we're actually going to be seeing a couple more demo bikes come in here. They do get the detonation, also taking down the ECM, which will be pretty annoying because that ECM is very, very nice to have. The flame tank does get the attack on the Overlord, but it's not quite fast enough. And on the left side of the map, we do have, on the left side of this little area, rather, we do have Black Lotus and the Dragon tank, rather, from RaGe, going to be clearing away the buildings, basically just collapsing everything. And you gotta hand it to DoMiNaToR. He's doing a pretty good job of holding off RaGe's aggression, and RaGe hasn't been able to do a huge amount in this game. Black Lotus is going to be moving forward at about half health there, and more demo bikes are going to be pushing on forward. Of course, that is listening outpost, or is it an attack outpost? Nope, listening outpost is stealth, which of course means that the demo bikes will just drive around it and go for the Overlord tank, which is either a bunker Overlord or not upgraded. I can't actually remember. Looks like not upgraded, as he does go ahead and get the propaganda upgrade right there. More demo bikes just constantly being pumped, which is definitely one way to deal with this. I'm assuming we do have Palace and Black Markets out. We do, of course, have the Palace there, but the Black Market is not out, and a demo bike does come up. The cell from DoMiNaToR is what's going to be actually saving that arms dealer from the Black Lotus, and there is not going to be... There's the detonation, though. Does the bike actually detonate? I didn't actually realize that the bike itself did detonate. For, maybe that's just a demo general that does that, but wasn't actually aware of that. More Dragon tanks going to be coming out from RaGe to go ahead and clear away some of these buildings. Of course, the garrisons do act as strong points for this kind of mid to late game eco that you can secure for yourself. The listening outpost, it is empty, so it's not really doing a whole lot except for spotting for RaGe, which of course does allow him to intercept units. There goes the demo bike, and the terrorist goes down as well. The Dragon tank from kind of the other side of this little dip will be flaming down both of those buildings with the firewall ability, going to be able to clear that up. We do have a supply stash on the left side. For a second I was a little bit confused. It's not super optimal positioning, but it is, I mean, it's a little bit of long distance mining, but it's certainly better than nothing. For a second I thought it was a barracks, which I guess you could deploy barracks on the front lines there if you really wanted to. The quad pop, not quite good enough to eliminate that, the Helix chopper, which, yeah, the double Helix, I guess they're technically called. But the airfield is out, and of course we could end up seeing the MiGs, but most likely we will not. Nice control here from the ECMs, going to be getting a detonation, though. DoMiNaToR doing what he can with the terrorist forces of the GLA to go ahead and stop the Chinese power of RaGe. And again, oh, actually there was the Overlord, which we haven't seen for a little while, coming out from DoMiNaToR, the one he managed to capture and escape with. And however, Jarmankel is going to be moving out. Should have the snipe on cooldown relatively soon here. Might be able to get one of the Overlords once again. At the very least, that's going to be an annoyance for RaGe to deal with. Of course, with Black Lotus on the front lines, you have to be careful if Black Lotus does get revealed. I'm not sure that it's an instant snipe, but it's pretty darn close. Catches a lot of the workers there as well. That supply stash is pretty much useless for the next little while. However, Helix is taking a bit of damage there. Jarmankel will escape. And Black Lotus also going to be able to make it out of there. But now it is going to be 3 demo bikes. 2 of them do get eliminated. The third does go down, but it's a little bit too late. The ECMs do go down. And also the, I think it was listening outpost as well. So very good control there from RaGe, but it's not quite good enough to deal with everything that DoMiNaToR is throwing at him. DoMiNaToR capturing that flame tank, which was shot down earlier in this game. And RaGe doing well. So yeah, he is definitely nuke general, as you can see. And other than that, I mean, you can tell from the, I think they're nuclear battle masters is what they're actually called. And as you can see, Jarmankel being revealed a little bit there, I'm assuming by the listening outposts. That's pretty crazy range if he's actually being revealed from that, from all of that distance away. On the left side of the map, however, the supply stash has been established, and it's been mining for quite some time. We do have a Stinger site going to help protect against those Helixes and also just any general units that get sent out there. Helix is coming in, and they're able to get some shots off. Really just striking down the tunnel is the biggest thing that happened there. And again, just taking out a few more structures here and there. However, RaGe hasn't been able to really split or break the contain that DoMiNaToR has set up. As you can see, this is one reason why some players and people just dislike Tournament Desert. It tends to be quite campy, especially for GLA. They can just kind of, not teleport, but they can transport a lot of their units very, very easily all over the map. And RaGe is going to be doing what he can to go ahead and harvest some of this supply in the middle of the map. But with the Stinger sites and with also the tunnel networks, you can't just sneak a Black Lotus by anywhere on the map. It's getting increasingly more difficult. However, before the tunnels actually get established and before the RPG troopers actually show up, you can get a couple of shots off there. Jarmankel sniped something. I'm not sure actually what he got the snipe on. I thought for sure that I heard the snipe. I'm not exactly sure where it was. I think Jarmankel actually may be in a... Oh, well, he has been seen at this point, and we do have a quad pop with a bit of an engagement there. A couple of quads are up to that fully heroic status, although they are getting eliminated really quite quickly, so there is no longer any fully heroic squads. And the Dragon Tank on the right side is going to be able to clear out, I'm assuming, a couple more of these workers as well. But finally, RaGe is starting to push in and do the damage that he needs. He's kind of built up to that critical mass of units, and he's starting to just push on forward. Nice pull on the Helix there. It's not quite fast enough, though. Unfortunately for RaGe, he wasn't just able to save all 3 of those Helixes. Got very close, but now the Overlord tank can tank a little bit more. But the tank pop from some DoMiNaToR will be chasing away RaGe and almost gets the kill there. Won't quite be able to eliminate. Actually, may be able to just catch this Overlord tank from RaGe and just eliminate him, as the workers are all going to be detonating on top of those units. But another carpet bombing does come down, carving a path right through, well, some of DoMiNaToR's defenses. Didn't actually take out the tunnel, so I guess in the end, the GLA holes, rather, not so much the tunnels, but in the end, those will be rebuilt, and no real progress was made. However, we do now have nuke cannons out on the field, and of course, the quad pop may be good enough. I'm not actually sure if that was a quad in there. Yes, it was good enough, and it was a quad in there to go ahead and catch the Helix, but traded a quad and a kind of captured Overlord. I mean, he didn't have to pay for the Overlord, but he did capture it, which I think it was only an RPG trooper, so that probably was worth it considering the infantry that were inside of the Helix, which is what the tank hunters over here, tank busters? What are they actually called? Tank hunters. It's tank busters in Relic 3. I always get those two confused. EMP may very well be coming down, which of course you can combine EMP. I'm assuming this is EMP. I don't think they have anything else. Not 100% sure, but Mine Drop. Mine Drop, the far more utilized. Is EMP China? I think it is, because I think USA has leaflets. And Anthrax is GLA. Yeah, I think they have Mine Drop and EMP, but EMP is like Tier 3 or 5-star General, whatever you want to call it. At any rate, that Dragon Tank really did nothing. A nice pop there by Dominator. You're going to be evacuating all of the units out of that structure just to avoid the... Actually, the mine's getting cleaned up pretty much almost immediately. One little patch of mines is still left and may actually end up causing some trouble. Nope, everything does get cleaned up. So nice moves there by Dominator. Going to be basically protecting his workers and his units. Could be detonating a couple of these workers on the trucks. Takes out 3 of the trucks, and the quads come out of the tunnels after that. They're going to be getting a couple of kills, but they can't really stand up to the power over the overlords. They might be able to overwhelm this one overlord, but it would be at pretty heavy losses. So I'm not sure if that's necessarily exactly what you want to be doing. Second quad does go down. And this quad's not really doing a whole lot, but as long as black markets are established, you don't have to worry too much about being inefficient. You can afford to lose units here and there as long as you're not losing them in huge amounts. RaGe really just banging his head against this wall and doing what he can to try to break through. This is unfortunately what ends up happening with some of these not tournament decision, but rather, there we go. There's the actual detonation of that terrorist going to be eliminating the supply stash. This is unfortunately what happens with this map, just kind of the general design of it. You start quite far away, and then you sort of build to these 3 center choke points, and once you lock those down, it can be difficult for either player to really break through. And unless you end up getting hackers out, which is quite expensive and take quite a while to pay for themselves, unless you actually get enough hackers out to really bolster up your economy, you're going to be dealing with a lot of damage output from the GLA. As you can see, Dominator's currently sitting at 3.8k, and RaGe currently sitting at 375 credits on the other hand. So as you can see, the two players, a huge economic difference between them. A somewhat interesting game coming out, and there is going to be another carpet bomb coming out, and I just love how things explode in that fashion. As you saw, the workers just ejecting in huge amounts. The quads do come out of the tunnel in just enough time to chase away some of these helixes. RaGe doing what he can to jump in and out from those sort of tunnels, and he was trying to just do the minimum amount of damage necessary to kill the hole and eliminate that tunnel entirely. And as you saw there, he was basically just popping in and out of range, trying to avoid the quads, trying to avoid all of the unnecessary damage. ECM does lock down that terrorist once again, and a quick 1-2 from the Overlord tank will allow him to eat that up without too much trouble. But again, we're returning to sort of this stalemate. And as you can see on the minimap, we do indeed have the artillery barrage should be coming down on top of these. Actually going to be on top of the structure as well as that tunnel, but not quite enough. And there's another snipe coming off from Jarmankel. I'm not actually sure where it happened. Looks like it was over here, and we do have the Demo Rebel ambush, which is really quite devastating, except for when you choose to just capture the Overlord. It's not quite as devastating then as when you just decide to detonate them all on a building, which is a pretty good way of just doing quite a bit of damage to buildings. And that is the longest harvest distance that I've probably ever seen in Generals. Although you do 0 hour, but you do what you gotta do. And you know, if you have to long distance harvest quite a bit, then that's what you do to get through the game. As you can see, RaGe is just so low on cash and loads up a ton of tank hunters into that helix. Or rather, the bunker licks. As you can see, all 3 of them or actually one of them is actually going to the propaganda tower. As you can see, they're healing, getting healed, which is of course how that happens. And I'm assuming that pretty much everyone here understands the basics of Generals in 0 hour, the basics of the units and their abilities. So hopefully, if this is over your head, you can of course check out, as I mentioned, Generals Gentlemen, because they are fantastic. And again, the quad's coming out at just the right moment to try to defend this. They do pick off one of the helixes, and as you can see, the radiation there, I think it does residual damage on the ground afterwards. But the quads are popping out just outside of range. Really great control here by Dominator, and really, with taking down that extra helix, RaGe had one final helix left. GG's out of the game, and that'll pretty much be wrapping up that match. So, not a super awesome game. We didn't see any, like, super crazy displays of micro, but that was definitely a solid match of 0 hour in that it was just, like, standard, pretty much as you can get from what I can tell. I didn't spot a whole lot of really wonky, crazy things. The openers seemed pretty standard, but maybe someone can correct me. As you can see, supplies collected 40,000 credits in the favor of DoMiNaToR, and overall, he was just able to build a lot more stuff. And I mean, units lost, he lost a lot more. I'm not sure, like, with terrorists, if it counts both the bike and the terrorist as 2 separate units, or maybe only if you get off of the bike. I'm not entirely sure, so that could be a little bit inflated over what it actually should be. But as you can see, RaGe playing China, just having a little bit tougher units, a little bit more resilient units, and as a result, losing a little bit less there, even though he did drop down in the end. And that'll pretty much be wrapping up game number 1. As I said, I'm not going to be casting all of them because a lot of them looked like they were really quite quick, boring, trash games. We're going to be casting the ones that are a little bit longer, that have got a little bit more substance to them, so keep an eye out for that. And we may actually be jumping into it right now, but I don't know, maybe I'll save it for another video. I guess it depends on how long the replay is. This is Sybert, maybe signing out, maybe going into another game. We'll see. What the heck? We're going to be jumping into another match. This is Sand Serpent, and once again, this is another match. I didn't actually look up what game number this is, but at any rate, we do have, as the pink Demolition General, it's DoMiNaToR, and in the south, as the USA, again, I didn't actually check. Sorry about that. We will definitely be learning. Let's see. Does it actually tell me the upgrade name? Because I know he may actually just be Vanilla USA. I know that the Super Weapon USA General actually has a slightly different upgrade on the whatchamacallit. Oh, we actually are going to be having a bit of a Chinook drop, including the Dozer and a couple of missile defenders, so we're going to be seeing some early action potentially, although he could also be looking to just lock down parts of the map a little bit earlier than his opponent. Second Chinook is going to be just going for that harvesting, and after that we do have another supply going to be getting down. And of course, as USA with the Chinooks, you can long distance harvest a little bit more efficiently than the other factions can, especially GLA with their much slower workers. A couple of what are they even called? Rangers? Yeah, I think so. A couple of Rangers mixed in as well, just to help with that anti-infantry DPS. So already not a great start here for DoMiNaToR, but of course with those terrorists, he is going to be able to clean up a couple of units fairly quickly. Chinook's finally going to be getting away to that harvesting, and as you can see, it's not a huge deal. But also, oil derricks, I believe every player kind of starts with 2 oil derricks. This is a 1v1 map, by the way, so I guess every player, being both players, starts with oil derricks, and then there's another in the middle, and I think there's one more. No, it's actually going to be a what is this actually called? A reinforcement pad. So, as you can see, there's like 4, I think. Yeah, I think there's like 4 oil derricks on the map, or maybe only 3. No, there's 4 or 5. There's 5 on the map, and then a reinforcement pad is, I believe, what the count is. So, economically, this map, of course, does have quite a bit of potential, and we are actually going to be seeing... Will he actually get it? No, he doesn't quite finish the demo trap. Does instead have to cancel it, and this Dozer is not actually going to be escaping, which is a little bit unfortunate for RaGe. Of course, he's already established himself a little bit here. Really, he's going for Rockby, so he's definitely going to be wanting to get that strategy center up and running. Of course, that will give him access to the search and destroy ability, I guess you could call it, the search and destroy buff, which gives him like 20% range, I think it is. It's whatever one gives him range, because that'll allow his Rockbees to be a lot more effective. And other than that, I guess he could be Air Force General. I mean, Air Force General has combat Chinooks, so I think they just start with the regular Chinooks. Don't they have both? I don't actually know. You see, this is why the generals, gentlemen, cast generals in 0 hour, because I have no idea what I'm doing. I don't cast nearly enough. I don't watch quite enough to really understand all of the little nuances for it. Because I mean, you've got how many factions? I think you've got 12 in total, because you've got the vanilla factions, and then I think you've got 3 sub factions under that. I can't actually try to name them all off of the top of my head. I'd get too distracted and probably end up messing it up. At any rate, there's a ton of different stuff going on in generals and well, in 0 hour. And I don't keep track of it all, but as you can see, these players doing what they can to go ahead and secure those oil derricks. And of course, you do have to, if you're unfamiliar with this, it's not like Engineers in Kane's Wrath and Red Alert 3. You have to actually purchase an upgrade, which allows you to capture buildings. Rockbees, on the other hand, already out. Tow missiles may be getting researched at some point, just for a little bit of extra DPS. And of course, you have to be very careful when exiting units from structures, because the splash damage and the stacking of like those first few moments of when you exit units from the structure. They're terribly, terribly stacked. And so you can really get some tremendous amounts of DPS to come out on units. And it can be really quite devastating most of the time. Players do it early enough, good enough players do it early enough to where that's not too big of a problem. But it can be, in some cases, a big problem. Okay, so yeah, it is search and destroy. Look at that. Look at that. I knew a thing. One thing. I got one thing right. That's all I need. I need one thing to be right, and then I am good to go. A couple Chinooks pulled off the line. Could have been taking a little bit of extra damage here from the RPG troopers. I'm assuming that's what actually was happening. And the RPG troopers able to get cleaned up there by those Rock Vs. And so search and destroy, basically that just gives, I believe, 20% extra range. And if you didn't know, in 1.04, rocket troopers or missile defenders inside of Humvees have crazy range. And as you can see, a nice terrorist, kind of just a single terrorist, but in combination with the RPG troopers, was able to clean up that power plant. And the dozer does get loaded up into the Chinook. We need to keep an eye on the Chinook to see if the RPG troopers are able to focus it down really quite quickly. However, the Chinooks, he's going to be protected a little bit here by the slowness of those RPG troopers, but also by the Rock Vs going to be just basically kiting away essentially forever. These Rock Vs can really just kite almost anything forever with that upgrade. And as a result, they're going to be able to eliminate this force really quite quickly. And what is it, an engagement that would have turned out a lot differently, a lot more differently. It would have turned out very differently, is what I'm trying to say. I had to run through, like, terrible ways of saying that to find the correct one. But as you can see, that engagement could have turned out a lot of different ways, but without micro, without kiting, RaGe would have just been absolutely destroyed there. As long as DoMiNaToR gets the ejects out on those units and actually gets the RPGs out and firing, he would have just got absolutely destroyed there. He just had too much stuff. But as you can see, RaGe is doing a good job of kiting away from the damage from these units. And if he had a couple of Pathfinders in there, it would be just ridiculously OP because all of these guys would be dead. Pathfinders inside of Humvees I mean, they do push the cost up a little bit there, and you do have to use one of your general's points on them, but they're so good at killing infantry. It is absolutely insane, especially once you start getting them ranked up. At any rate, RaGe is starting to just push out with that classic America. This is America. And wow, those Humvees actually throw shadows onto the water below the bridge. I'm not sure how that's possible. Terror technical could be what is going on here. I'm assuming that's what it was. Yes, it was. I think it's just a single terrorist, though. So it's not actually super effective. I'm not really sure where that was going, if he was trying to get into the heart of the Humvees before ejecting and detonating, which is definitely a possibility. And as we kind of transition into the mid or even late game eventually, when we get around to the late game, we do have to keep an eye on these clumps of units, because clumping units can be very dangerous to a little thing called Demo Rebel Ambush, which of course does allow you to spawn way too many rebels, but I don't remember how many it is when you get it all the way up. And then of course, as the demo player, you do have this wonderful ability that allows you to detonate like any infantry unit. I don't think it's any vehicle as well. I think it's just infantry units that the upgrade applies to, that allows you to detonate any infantry unit and basically act like a bomb. So terrorists do probably bonus damage. As you can see right there, cleans up 2 and 2 more Humvees? Was that 4 in total? That's actually kind of ridiculous. There is the laser lock trying to eliminate a couple more of those terrorists, and the manual detonation there will be kind of allowing those RPG troopers to survive. The missile defenders will survive for a little bit longer. No toxin tractors are actually going to be produced to go ahead and deal with that building. May just have to go ahead and throw a couple of terrorists at it to eliminate that building. But as you can see, Humvees, Rock Vs, call them what you want, they're so good, but they're so weak. And this is, of course, for you kind of zero-hour noobs out there. Those of you who aren't really familiar with this, if you're a veteran, then you probably hate my casting because it's a pretty low level. But at any rate, A-10 Strike coming in, able to eliminate a couple of really not anything. Again, eliminating the civilian structure is not the hugest thing in the world, not the biggest thing. Hugest thing, not the biggest thing in the world. However, you don't want to be taking too much damage on those Humvees. RaGe could definitely be pulling those Humvees back to make sure that he doesn't lose any of them unnecessarily. As you can see, he decided not to, and will actually be losing potentially a second one. Does control a little bit better, but ends up losing that Humvee as well. Fortunately, the pilot does, of course, survive, so he can go ahead and throw that into another Humvee to go ahead and pass that veterancy along. I'm not actually sure which one of those Humvees. I thought one of the Humvees grabbed the pilot. I guess it wasn't actually going to happen. And missile defenders versus RPG troopers. Not exactly the most exciting thing to watch, since it's basically like the softest counter you can possibly get. I mean, if it's Toxin RPGs, which is Toxin General, they have basically, I think, like chemical heads, and it does like damage to infantry as well. That's pretty okay, pretty good. And wait, okay, that was a spy drone. I was a little bit confused as to how the firebase actually had a spy drone above it. Oh, and inside the range of that firebase. Firebases do have minimum range distance there. As you can see, the firebase wasn't actually able to hit the terrorist once he got inside of a certain range, and that actually wouldn't have been all that beneficial anyways. Being able to kill the terrorist when he's that close to you really doesn't do a whole lot. RaGe staying on top of that macro, making sure he's producing a lot of missile defenders and producing a lot of Humvees. Looks like a couple of structures were taken out there. Very unfortunate there. And as you can see, it's just vanilla USA for RaGe. He's not actually going to be any particular special sub-faction. And DoMiNaToR is starting to work through the defenses of RaGe. RaGe definitely slipping a little bit here with the map control. And of course, now that he has his command center back up, his mini-map should be working. Which, as you can see, yes, he can indeed see. And then, of course, DoMiNaToR, on the other hand, sitting at 5K right now. He's definitely going to be very happy about that. And Colonel Burton, I was actually wondering what that was. Going to be going for the barracks. I couldn't actually remember what it's called, despite the fact that it's in every single game ever. But the barracks is going to be getting eliminated there, and Colonel Burton planting down those charges. And then, of course, I forgot that, that's actually kind of strange that it doesn't actually kill. The manual detonation may be good enough to kill Colonel Burton. We'll have to see, as, no, it's not going to be good enough, as he does get the kill on both of them there. However, it's kind of interesting that the demolitions from Colonel Burton don't actually kill the GLA hull under the building, which makes it not quite as effective as versus some of the other factions. And of course, getting off your bikes if you have time proves to be pretty darn effective, since you get both of the detonations from the bike and also from the terrorist. We'll have to see if the demo trap is going to be actually detonating. Nice detonation there. We'll clean up both of those Rock Vs. And some really critical mistakes here from RaGe. I mean, really, not being able to see the demo trap is one thing. He just doesn't have detection to be able to spot that. But unfortunately for him, he did lose a couple of unnecessary Humvees at some other points in this game. The airfield is down, and Comanches are now out on the field, which will be forcing quads out of our GLA player. While our GLA player may want to start looking at some buggies, he's instead going to just pretty much have to go with quads to deal with the Comanches. Although if it's only one Comanche, he won't necessarily have to get out quads, but Comanches just tear through infantry really quite easily, and once you get the rocket pod upgrade, then they can do insane amounts of damage to buildings as well. So you really do have to be careful versus Comanches. But if you just start spamming them, then quads can deal with them pretty darn effectively. And rockets going off in the middle of the map. Going to be cleaning up a couple of those dominators of DoMiNaToR's RPG troopers. Looks like A-10 Strike was able to clean up the oil derrick. Not sure if it's worth it to actually use the entire support power just for that oil derrick. I think all of the oil derricks have now been cleaned up on the map. Yes, indeed, they have. They have all been eliminated, which means it's going to be down to the supplies of each player, and then, of course, to the black markets or the supply drop zones. Call them what you like, depending on the faction. And the pilot jumping inside. I don't know, did the pilot actually just jump inside of the Humvee rather than just like garrison itself inside of the Humvee, rather than actually giving the veterancy to that Humvee? Detonation on those demo traps, not really doing a whole lot in this scenario. And of course the Comanche showing up as well to the party, which again, this may end up forcing just a big quad transition from our GLA player. He has started producing a few quads here, and the Firebase is going to be lending some extra DPS to help eliminate these quads. Quads are a little bit resilient, while really the Firebase DPS isn't super crazy, but it does have pretty good range, and mixing in just a single missile defender is going to be making this this defense a lot stronger. Of course, with the Comanches being chased away over here to the bottom right side of the map, kind of. Actually, it's the bottom right side of this little section of the map, but it's the bottom left side of the map. Comanches do show up. They do trade fairly well, as you can see, with those weakened quads, but you do have to be careful because 3 or more quads will just absolutely trash this. And actually, with the one weakened Comanche like that, probably 1 or 2 quads will be able to trash that pretty darn easily. I'm not actually sure exactly how the units trade. However, you do have to be careful because of the range of the quads. They have such good range. It's actually kind of crazy that they can shoot from all the way back there and hit those Comanches. But that aside, you of course do have to be worried about that. And DoMiNaToR has been defeated. RaGe has left the game as well. So as you can see, DoMiNaToR not able to just push through as much as he was in that game. RaGe definitely coming out ahead in that with the resources collected overall. I mean, you can see he's 11,000 credits ahead in a 15-minute game. So a pretty big economic disparity. And really, what was he able to do with that? He was able to funnel it into a ton of Rock Vs, as we saw right there. The great control from RaGe, just really showing the domination of those Rock Vs. But then the follow-up, he didn't stay on Rock Vs forever. Yes, he used them as his kind of meat and potatoes units throughout the entire game because they're so good when you've got the control of RaGe. But on top of that, following it up with the Comanches, starting to mix things up and starting to kind of diversify. And then of course you want to make sure that you have the money to get the command center later game for those support powers. At any rate, DoMiNaToR going to be dropping that map. So as far as we're concerned, both of these players taking one game, but there's 4 other replays that you can check out on GameReplays.org. Maybe they're fantastic. I am not going to be checking them out. We're going to be jumping into some more matches soon. So, of course, thank you very much for watching. This is Sybert, signing out.